The classic way to interview people is to stop before you interview them and understand what you're looking for. So people spend so much time thinking about the questions and developing questions, and they have question banks. And that's the first kind of work that we get asked to do at Recruiting Toolbox. Can you work on our question bank? And my answer is no. A, I hate that work. Yep. And B, that's not what you need. What you need is a better understanding of what it is that you're looking for. You're looking for all these questions because you haven't sat down and said, these are the 5 skills that are most important to me, and these are the behaviors that are important to me. These are the things that I want. This is the way that I need someone to work on my team in my company.
Hey, everybody. I'm Laurie Brudeman, and this is Punk Rock HR. In each episode, we take a realistic but slightly cynical approach to fixing work, bringing you raw and honest conversations with disruptors, innovators, and even random working people like you and me with one goal: to reshape the workplace as you know it. But sometimes we take a break from all that and talk about real life, like relationships and well-being and kids and animals. And along the way, we drop a few F-bombs too. Whether you're an HR professional trying to do the right thing, a leader looking to connect with their people, or just fascinated by workplace dynamics, this is your destination to fix work once and for all. On this episode, I'm chatting with Carmen Hudson. She's an acclaimed recruiter, has worked with leading brands on the West Coast, and is the author of the Corporate Recruiting Playbook, Strategies for Hiring Top Talent. She's on the show today to share what she's learned, how recruiters, leaders, HR, hiring managers, and everybody at work can work together to attract, find, assess, and hire top talent. So if you're curious about hiring and want to learn how to do it from a pro, sit back and enjoy this chat with my good friend, Carmen Hudson. Hey, Carmen, welcome to the show.
Hey, Laurie, thank you for having me.
My goodness, it's a long time coming. I'm trying to think about when I first met you, and it must have been like 2008.
Oh, I remember exactly when I first met you.
You do? What was it?
It was about 2008, 2007. And I wrote you, you said something online about, I'm thinking about going back into corporate. This is hard. And I wrote you a long email, had never spoken to you before. I don't think I'd ever tweeted to you, nothing about how you shouldn't do that. And I gave you all kinds of unasked for advice.
You know, what a blessing. And I have to say, I've had those panicked moments since then, Carmen. But wow, that is an amazing way for the two of us to connect. You know, the minute I met you in real life, I knew we were kindred spirits. I've just fallen deeply in love with you, with your husband, William. You're someone who influences me not only in the world of like recruitment and hiring, but just how to live a good life that's balanced, that's principled, and also how to bring art into my life. So before we get started talking about all the good stuff, why don't you tell everybody who you are and what you're all about?
Sure thing. So my name's Carmen Hudson, and I will call myself just a recruiter since the mid-90s. So I started off in executive search, just doing research, and that eventually launched a career in sourcing and moved out to Seattle, and spent a little bit of time in Florida, and I found myself working for really super large corporations with great reputations and huge hiring engines. And so I got to, in many cases, experiment and build and improve. And so I really have enjoyed my career inside of companies. And then I switched. You may remember, I think we met around the time that I launched my own startup, that lovely experiment. That died a couple of years ago.
Wait, but the party was memorable.
The party was memorable. And I learned so much. It was the most failure of biggest failures, but I learned so much, so I would never, ever, ever regret doing one moment of that. And so then I went into consulting and training. And so consulted and trained for many, many years, and went back into a corporate role for a very short term and left that and wrote a book.
Well, I'm excited to talk about you as an author. I mean, true and true, you are a recruiter. I mean, this is in your bones, it's in your DNA. You've been recruiting since the last century. So, like, you've been doing it for a minute. What is it about recruiting that was true then and is true today?
It's true that it's difficult, and it's difficult because there are so many variables. So you could have the same role could be open, and you could go out to the market. The market's different. It may be that these people are very highly and steadily employed, and so it's a competitive event. Or it could be that many people are on the market, as may be the case with recruiters right now, and so it is not as competitive. It may be that the role that you're hiring for may look different than it looked last year. It could be just that the people that you are meeting meet your needs, don't meet your needs. You like them, you don't like them, they like you, don't like you. All of these factors actually influence how and when and who we hire. And so that just will never change.
Well, there are consistencies within recruiting, even when there are a lot of variables. And one of the things that struck me in my career is that back in the late 90s, we were talking about like how hard it is to hire people. And we're talking about that today, right? And then we talk about, oh, the economy is terrible in the late 90s, right? And the economy in some sectors of our country is terrible today, right? But it's always true that people are hiring, isn't it?
It's always true. I'm a little bit cautious because I see AI creeping into what we do. And I think that's going to mean quite a few job losses. Now, it will mean that other professions will rise and we'll see increases. But the truth of the matter is, a lot of the work that, in the same way that some work has gone away in the last decade or so. If you go into your local Target or convenience store these days, you don't see as many cashiers, and that's not going to change. They will improve that until there are no cashiers.
Yeah, they can't make it any worse, that's for sure.
They can't make it any worse. I do my part by when I go to the Safeway, I go to the line with the person in it, and my husband doesn't understand. It takes so much longer. It's a long line. It's like it's the one thing I can do, to save someone's job at least for a little while. So
That's right. That's right. So are you noticing that there are fewer jobs just generally because of AI or even fewer jobs within the world of recruiting?
I think there will be multiple attempts to get rid of what is an expensive cost center over time. And so I think here locally in Seattle, we have a large employer, and they are quite vocal about they are not trying to hire back as many recruiters as they once had. And we are going to continue to experience this. I think what will happen is, we get rid of everyone, then we go, oh, we need people and we need them back, but they need fewer and fewer. They start to introduce more solutions, and suddenly we find ourselves with way fewer than we had. So it's not that it's immediate. I think we're experiencing more of a financial market for most companies, but eventually we will experience what happens when the knowledge market changes.
Wow. All right. Well, pivots in the economy, pivots in the way that we're hiring, and yet you wrote a really optimistic, really important book on the world of recruiting. Tell us about your book.
So it really is. Someone said, I wish there was a place I could go to understand this and to talk about this. And there are places that we have online, but it is the moment in time, right? When I go to that website, when I visit that particular tool or what have you, I'm going to get the information that's now. But I wanted to share the things that at least I thought were consistent across the board. I don't mention technology. I think I mentioned LinkedIn a couple of times, but I don't really go into what tools that are important to use. I really talk about what we need to do as recruiters and as recruiting leaders to set this thing up so that it works well. So that if you've got 5 recruiters, or if you've got 500, or if you've got 2,500, how do you make sure this is running well, that you're doing the right things, that you're doing the right things by candidates, that you're partnering with your hiring managers well. It's all those basics that I learned as a junior recruiter, and there was no there's no source for me. Like every single thing was a lesson. I bumped my head on the wall so many times. And I was very fortunate to work with great people who knew, like, oh, she's trying. She's an idiot, but she's trying. So, and over the years, I figured it out and I captured at least what I could remember to capture as that. And so I say early on in the book, if you find my book insufficient or you've got additional ideas, write it down, share it. It was a little bit frustrating and time consuming to write this, but not so much that I wouldn't do it again. And it was pretty easy to publish it. So if you've got some thoughts there, share it. I just want people to really start to focus on what's the entire process. There are sourcers out there who are great at thinking about sourcing. There are folks out there who are great at thinking about the candidate side of things. We need all of it written down in one place so that people can start this profession with a little bit of knowledge, because there's so little out there to teach people.
Carmen, when people normally come on the show and present their book, they tell stories, right? And they have all these like sound bites, right? Yeah, yeah. So tell us in your book, how did you decide how to structure it? Because you've really written what is like the Wikipedia of recruiting, right? So tell us a little bit about how you built the book.
All right. So I wrote the Corporate Recruiting Playbook, Strategies for Hiring Top Talent. You will find that on Amazon. I structured the book in the way that that recruiting is structured. So I start with a chapter that talks about the candidate experience, which is not always the most exciting topic, but at the root of what we do are the folks that we are serving, at the folks that we are trying to bring into our organizations. And if we don't do that well, we have very little chance of getting the high caliber candidates that we want. So
Yeah, wait. So wait, I want to interrupt because you start with candidate experience and not with shareholder experience or leadership experience or hiring manager experience. You think the candidates are the people that recruiters serve.
that's it. If we don't find the right candidates, if we don't get the right candidates to the right manager for the right job, we're never going to be successful. And so that's where I've always placed my emphasis. And probably, because I think you're right, I think there are different ways of looking at this, but I think it probably impacted how my career flowed, because I didn't think in the way that HR leaders thought. For me, if I had an issue, it was going to that manager, that hiring manager, and really working out, how do we solve this issue? How do we solve this so that we're getting you the right person? So yeah, there are probably different ways of thinking about it, but that's where I started. Yeah.
All right. So start with candidate experience. What's next?
And then from there, I just dive right into how to do this. And so you get a rec, it lands on your desk. What do you do next? And I talk very deeply about what you do next really does impact how you're viewed as a recruiter, how your career will go. Again, it took me a long time to figure this out. And I'll tell you, I didn't tell this story in the book, but I'll tell you the story. So I was at Microsoft. And so by that time, I'd been into my recruiting career for quite some time. And I had an open rec, and I was excited about this rec, showed up to the hiring manager with a blank notebook and ready to have a discussion and talk about things and get this rec going. And I thought we had a great meeting. But later on, I got copied on an email, and I'm nosy, so I read every email all the way down to the bottom.
Of course, yeah.
And there was an email where this manager was complaining to my manager about my ability to support her position because she wasn't certain, because I showed up with a blank piece of paper and pretty general questions.
Whoa.
So yeah, that just struck. I was a recruiter's recruiter. I loved what I did. People told me I was good, and turns out, oh, I sucked. So from that moment on, I was like, okay, how do I get better at this? And what do I need to do to prepare for one of these meetings? And so that became a big deal. And the difference between a great recruiter, if you ask any hiring manager, and an okay recruiter, you need them. So you're going to smile at them in the hallway and you're going to be nice to them, but you know that they're kind of sucking. And so you're not going to say that to them. You may say that to their manager. And in this case, I was fortunate enough, it took me a couple of days to get over it, but I was fortunate enough to get the message that I wasn't that great. And so that could have, I could have said, oh no, I'm really good. Or I could have said, no, I'm not so great. So let me figure this out. And so I learned that you have to prepare for your open position before you meet with your manager. You've got to learn as much as you can learn, fill in as much as you can fill in, and show up in that meeting with some intelligence. It could be all wrong, but your manager's going to appreciate the work that you put into it.
This is William Tincup, and I'd like to direct you to a wonderful limited series podcast that Ryan and I recorded live at the ERE Recruiting Innovation Summit. We sat down with 20 recruiting and TA leaders from around the world to hear what today's best recruiters are doing to stay sharp, stay relevant, and stay ahead. It's called The Talent Shift. You'll love it. You'll find the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Listen, like, review, share. Do you.
No, I like it. I mean, you don't want to walk into a meeting and say, tell me everything, right? And put the burden on.
I was thought that, I thought, like, I got it. Bring it on, sister. Tell me what you got to do, and I'm going to help you do it. And I would have gotten it done. But I didn't instill any confidence in her for her to have for me. So I didn't bring that.
It also reminds me that recruiting is really just relationships, right? It's both relationships with your organization and your hiring manager, but also with the candidates, and then bringing two people who don't know one another together to form a new relationship. So in that, if you're not building a relationship with your hiring manager, how can you then do that with candidates, right? It doesn't logically flow.
That's it. I think that's the core of doing this well. Like, it's not only developing a great relationship with your candidates, but developing a great relationship with your hiring managers and asking your hiring managers to bring someone along in the process. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I advise is that you don't work just with your hiring manager. Get your hiring manager to select someone senior on their team, someone who may be hiring more often in the future, so that they are learning as well. So we're all three working well together, and that works because then you have a backup person when things aren't going well. So
someone to email and say, where is that feedback?
Right. That's it. Right. That for me was a key lesson. It changed the way that I recruit, and it changed the way that I think managers view and work with me.
All right. So be prepared when you meet the hiring manager after you get the rec on your desk. Like, got it. Totally makes sense. But then what next? Because you don't talk about technology in the book, which I appreciate, because technology comes and goes, right? But how do we know that what we're doing in recruiting is effective? How do we know that the next steps we're taking set us up to close the rec within 6 months or a year, right? Because some of these recs stay open forever.
Some of them stay open forever. So
how do we know we're doing good work?
That takes me to a couple of the next principles that I talk about. The first is you have to know what you're looking for. And in recruiting, I have had recruiters who have never had a conversation with the hiring manager go, oh, I know what they're looking for. They looked for this last month, and they don't have this discussion, and their understanding of the rec is minimal at best. So I suggest in the book how to actually figure out what it is that you're looking for. You have to be very articulate about what it is that you're looking for. And most recruiters are not, especially in the world that I lived in tech recruiting. And you need that for several reasons. You need that so that you can know when you find someone, but you also need to have a great way of describing the position to the candidate. And so, we use job titles and we use jargon. Throw all that out the door and talk to me about what exactly you're hiring for. That's important.
I like the fact that we're talking about speaking in a jargon-free way, because one of the things that comes to mind is all of the biases we bring to the hiring process in and of itself. And sometimes it manifests in that jargon, right? We don't have to have a conversation that's long and detailed about the many ways that words include and exclude people. But talk to me a little bit about the importance of actually being more thoughtful in the way we describe jobs and the way we go out to the market in describing jobs. Because I know we don't call people ninjas and gurus anymore, but there are other versions of that, other iterations that are out there. So why is monitoring our language so important?
I think it's important because when we find ourselves doing that, when we're using ninja and guru and I want someone who does Java, blah, 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 it's masking what we don't know. That hurts us in our ability to recruit. And if we don't know, if we haven't had that deep conversation with a manager, you say that you need someone with 5 years of this. What if they have 4 years? What if they have 4.5 years, right? Oh, that's okay. Well, what if they have 3 years, but they still know this? How do you know that they know it? That's what's more important than the number of years. So let's talk about that. So getting your hiring managers to think about roles beyond years, beyond specific skills. What do you want them to do? And then we can figure out, in whatever kind of interview style that you want, have they done this in the past? And if we were to give them something that they haven't faced before, would they be able to meet that challenge?
Are you wedded to a particular style of interview? I'm so glad you brought that up because I was brought up in the late 90s, right? So we did the star-based method of interviewing, even for technical jobs. It's like, give me an example of a time, blah, blah, blah. And it was a stupid, forced practice conversation. So, like, what's cool, what's hip, or just like, what's a classic way to interview people?
The classic way to interview people is to stop before you interview them and understand what you're looking for. So people spend so much time thinking about the questions and developing questions, and they have question banks. And that's the first kind of work that we get asked to do at Recruiting Toolbox. Can you work on our question bank? And my answer is no. A, I hate that work. And B, that's not what you need. What you need is a better understanding of what it is that you're looking for. You're looking for all these questions because you haven't sat down and said, these are the 5 skills that are most important to me, and these are the behaviors that are important to me. These are the things that I want. This is the way that I need someone to work on my team in my company. And we don't do that, so we don't think about the answers. We're just thinking very deeply about all these great questions. I don't care how you ask the question. If you're looking for 5 skills and you're talking about whether or not they've used those skills or how they might use those skills if the situation presented itself, then you're going to know whether or not they are appropriate for the role. It doesn't matter how you ask the question, to be honest. I don't talk about that much at all.
I love that. I love that. Can I tell you my least favorite way, my least favorite interview style is role playing. Oh my God, Carmen. One time I was interviewing for a job at a shampoo company. By the way, I got that job. And they said, okay, we're going to give you a resume and we want you to pretend like you're in an interview and you're interviewing me and you're looking at the resume and doing the interview live, right? You're the recruiter. And I said, I'm not going to do this. And she said, well, how will I know if you know how to recruit? I said, call my references or ask me some other questions, right? I don't know what to tell you, but I'm not role playing. And she said, okay, I hear you, like moved on. And of course they offered me the job.
It gives me the opportunity to go completely silly and off the course and just share with someone how ridiculous. What's interesting to me, and I think this was when I was at Amazon, we got into this big debate about the kinds of questions that we ask some of our technical people and whether or not they ask all of those crazy questions about, how many boats are there, how many windows are there in Seattle.
Yeah, the Google questions. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think those are ridiculous. I think that what many of those engineers were trying to get to was whether or not someone had the kinds of skills that would be necessary to break down a problem. So what would be better is to actually present a problem and watch how they break it down. And if even better, that's good. And even better or best is actually to take a look at some problem that you have around Amazon, something for which you actually have an anchor, and you can learn about how that person breaks down a problem. Whether or not they know the number of windows there are in Seattle is ridiculous, and anyone can ask that question, and I'm sure they can find it these days on any website. So it's really about how do they solve this kind of problem? What tools do they use? What approach might they use? How many people will they talk to? And know that, this person's going to sit at their desk and they're going to fiddle with it and research it until they figure it out. If that's the kind of environment you work in, great. Or this person's going to first call someone, ask someone, get their network of people involved in this problem. That's the kind of environment that you work in, then that's great. But you got to figure it out.
I like that example. One of the things I hear from technical job seekers, people with actual really great skills that we're going to need in the future who are young, they hate being asked to do free work. And so they'll go on these interviews and they're given a problem to solve. And they're like, well, pay me and then I'll solve that problem for you, right? And so there's this disconnect with the candidate experience because it almost seems like some employers are looking for free work, or at least that's how it feels to some job seekers. So do you push back on that? Do you think that's overstated? Like, what's your reaction to hear? And have you heard that before?
I have. And that's where you can be really helpful as a recruiter and tell them, look, we're not going to put any problem in front of you that is proprietary. You're not going to be solving anything that we haven't already solved. So assure them of that. And that should be true, right? You don't want people unknown to your company going out solving your problems. Otherwise, you're going to have a startup that pops up suddenly that does something that you are asking about, so you don't do it very well. So you want to make sure that they understand why. And so that's the job of the recruiter, to explain, here's our process, and here's what we're looking for, how you problem solve. The problem itself doesn't matter. And if we don't have this conversation, we don't have any idea of how you might go about solving a problem. We're not going to ask you anything proprietary. We're not going to ask you to come up with, a new way to get to the moon. We're going to ask you about something that we've already done, something about which I'm pretty sure of the answers.
Carmen, I know you have a lot of points of view and they're all informed, but I know you're passionate about talking about people versus operations versus process. Tell me about that.
So what I learned after all these years in recruiting, that you need all three. That as a leader, if you are building out your recruiting organization, you need great people. You need great managers that are trained on the process, who understand it. You need the tools. So your operations need to be aligned and they should be accurate and easy. It should be easy to, for example, start a rec, open a rec. And I have worked in organizations where that was just the most difficult thing in the world. So fix that. That's what you need. And then you need a process. You need a process that works well for every single team. And you can't do it all as the leader. So you're going to have to get your teams working on that. But it's important to make sure that you have all of these elements aligned. If you don't, you're going to find yourself always under the gun, always feeling less successful than you really think you should be. And so that's what you've got to get everybody aligned on. Am I bringing the right candidates in? Am I approaching my hiring managers in the right way? Do I have the right team of recruiters? Great. Then it is, are we leveraging the right tools? Are we getting things done in an efficient way? And the last piece is, how are we doing that? And what does that look like for each team? How do we make sure that every team is successful in the process that they leverage? And the process might look a little bit different depending on the level and the kinds of roles, but generally you should have an idea of how the process works for your organization.
Yeah, I mean, I like that. I set the question up like a versus problem, and it's really more of an integration. It's more of a Venn diagram. And I think the reason why so many of us see this as like an antagonistic process is because many companies these days want to over index on technology and cut back on the recruiters, or believe that if they have a process, the process should dictate everything and just step in line, get on the bus, and then we'll fill this rec. And so I just wonder who's doing it right? Who's got all these things aligned?
There are teams that are doing, I don't know that there are organizations that are doing it all correctly, but there are teams that are doing it well. And when I was at Recruiting Toolbox, we'd have very in-depth conversations, and we'd always come back to, oh, okay, I get it. I don't have the right people, or I haven't trained my people, or my managers don't understand this. Or they come back to, I need to invest, and I need to buy that tool. Or it could be, you know what, we have to stop and we have to redesign, or it could be all three. So that's how I would filter what was coming into me. And then we would decide where they wanted to, spend their money and place their emphasis.
I want to take a break real quick just to let you know about a new show we've just added to the network. Up Next at Work, hosted by Gene and Kata Keel of the Devon Group. Fantastic show. If you're looking for something that pushes the norm, pushes the boundaries, has some really spirited conversations, Google Up Next at Work, Gene and Kata Keel from the Devon Group.
Hey, this is Brent Skinner, host of Small Talk Window here at the Work Defined Podcasting Network. Have you ever wanted a short podcast to listen to during a coffee break of your workday? You've come to the right place. My guests dispense with the small talk as quickly as possible and settle into a meaningful conversation around the world of work.
Makes sense. Well, there's one thing I want to talk about because it's something I know that you're passionate about discussing in a very frustrated way, and that is the back and forth swinging pendulum around diversity recruiting and diversity hires. And I think one of the things you're really passionate about is explaining what diversity hiring means, and then also what it is and what it isn't. So you've written some really great articles on LinkedIn that, as you said, tend to come up every year on Black History Month, right? So we can also talk about that and why people only read them then. But can we talk a little bit about your perspective on diversity recruiting, diversity hiring, and what recruiters need to know in 2024?
So my first comment when someone comes to me and says we need to do diversity hiring is, okay, let's take a look at your organization and see where diversity sits. And often that conversation sits with, oh, we're a technology organization and we go here and go here and we go here. And at the very lowest level, there's tons of diversity. And so for me, diversity, your first question about diversity means that you need to look at who is diverse in your organization and figure out how to get them in other parts of the company. And I don't think that's changed much. I think it is the case. And I think many companies rely on those numbers to say, hey, we have diversity. But as you look at different levels within your organization, do you really have diversity? And if you don't, why are certain people sitting at the lowest rungs of your organization without ever moving, without having the opportunity to move? A lot of it is they don't know how. A lot of it is a bridge needs to be built. And you can't blame an entry-level person for not understanding how things work. So that is the biggest, I think, fallacy, is that we have no diversity. There's often diversity in the organizations, but it's often that's sitting at the very lowest levels, and there hasn't been much effort into moving people into other roles, other levels.
I think that's charitable. And I mean, you're a supremely charitable human being. I also think that sometimes there's this idea of a meritocracy, and that I'm all for diversity hiring if they're good. You still hear it today in 2024.
I still hear it, and I hate the word meritocracy.
Yeah. So tell me about that.
So I think that, so I'll give you an example. When I was at a certain company, I decided that there was no gender diversity in a team. And so I started just to only send candidates of a certain gender to certain areas. And hiring decisions were made. And there was very little even recognition of what I was doing. A couple of managers said, hey, how come I haven't seen any men? And I just said, because you haven't, right? And so then I tried the same experience racially. And I did that. It happened to coincide with, there was a layoff at a very big company. It was a very different industry. So there was probably some work that I should have done to prepare these people to move into a different industry. That did not work as well. That became noted a little bit more. And I was not as successful in that approach. So I think that this idea that there's meritocracy, I think the way that you pull that apart is just what we talked about. I'd go right back to standing at the very beginning of the rec and let's talk about what you need. And being able to have that conversation really well. And then there are skills or words or phrases or behaviors that knock people out. And they do so without this kind of knockout process can hurt people who are diverse often. And so you have to knock that out early on. Or you have to be able to say, that doesn't meet the profile that we originally developed. Are you telling me that it's changed? And if it's changed, then we've got to go back and start over because we haven't interviewed any of these candidates in the right way. And that usually gets managers to sit back and go, okay, I'm talking about something that's not relevant. I'm demanding a skill from one person that I'm not demanding from the other person. So getting managers to really just fall back on their own word is the only way that I've been able to do it.
I like
And
it. I
sometimes it
like
works and sometimes it doesn't.
Well, and I like your punk rock subversive approach there. I mean, when it works, and when it doesn't, it doesn't. But
Well, that's all you can do.
you're
It's
you're only one person, you
you're
know.
only one person. I am not going to walk into any company and change their numbers if they're not willing to do it. And I have worked with many managers who were willing to say, "Okay, I'm not doing this right. I am putting barriers around getting roles on my teams, and so let me take some of those barriers away."
Well, Carmen, as we start to wrap up the conversation, you've written this really amazing book. What do you want people to know about the book? What do you think is really important for them when they're trying to figure out, am I going to plunk money down, right? Am I going to buy this book about recruiting? What's in it for them?
What's in it for them is, I think, for those who have been recruiting for a long time, it's just a checklist. Am I doing this well? Am I doing this well? Could I be doing more here? And for those who are newer to recruiting, it's an approach. It's my approach. It's what's worked for me. What's worked for people on my team. It's what I've learned over the years. I haven't always done all of this at any one time. So hopefully it gives you a little bit of a head start if you're newer in your career. So that's all I want to do. That's what I want to do.
I love it. It's like an act of giving back to the recruiting community because you yourself had to learn these lessons the hard way, correct?
That's it. That's it.
Yeah. Good. Carmen, one of the things I really want to know is who inspires you in the world of recruiting right now? I mean, you inspire so many people, but who do you look to who is doing it right or makes you feel hopeful? Like what's good? Who's good? What do you like?
I had the pleasure of working with some really great leaders in recruiting in my career. And so, and many of them I mentioned in the thank yous, and then some of them I wake up in the middle of the night and I think, oh my God, I left them out. But just throughout my career, I have worked with people who have said, when I said, I raised my hand and I want to do this and I want to do a good job, or when something went wrong, I'm here in front of you to say, I did it wrong, so sorry. They were quite willing to lean into it and say, here, I got you. I'm going to help you. I'm going to point you in this direction. I'm going to give you praise when I think you need it. And I'm going to tell you, stop doing that when I need you to stop doing that. And I don't want to start to name them because I'll forget someone and leave
Sure,
them
I
all
get it.
out.
It's like an Oscar speech. Yeah, I'm with you. But the one thing we can say is that our dear friend Jerry Crispin wrote the foreword to the book. So tell us a little bit about Jerry and why you picked him to write the introduction to the book.
I appreciate the fact that Jerry thinks about recruiting as a profession, that it is really the backbone of almost any organization are the people that are there, and how do the people who get there? How are they formed? How is it shaped? And he values the importance of that, and I value the importance of that.
Well, I value both of you, and I can't wait for you to get out there and teach people how to recruit with your wonderful new book. So first of all, can you tell us again the name of the book title and where to buy it? And also, are you available to do webinars and workshops? Like, what are you doing with the book?
So awesome. So the Corporate Recruiting Playbook, Strategies for Hiring Top Talent, it's available on Amazon. And I'm going to spend the next probably 2 or 3 months really figuring out what I want to do next. But I think what I want to do is coach recruiters who are moving into recruiting leadership roles. And so I'm coming up with an approach to doing that. And I haven't really shared that with people. That should be
breaking news here.
Breaking news. But looking at those people who are managers, new managers, or recruiters who want to move into leadership, really helping them get there. So
I'm super stoked to hear about this. And I just have a question. What's the differentiator? Because we know there are certain skills and attributes between like a regular contributor, like a manager or a director, right? But what's the difference between a recruiter and a recruiting manager, or a recruiting manager and recruiting director? Is it the technical knowledge of recruiting, or is it something else?
I think the technical knowledge of recruiting is critically important, but it's also that recognition, that desire that this could be done better, and I want to work on doing it better. And I had no idea. Scott Pataski at Amazon literally stopped me in the hall and said, hey, you know what? you're a manager. And I had never even thought, like, I thought that was years away. And I'm like, me, a manager? And he's like, yeah, you're a manager. And go solve these problems. And, some I did, some I didn't. Some are probably still sitting around there waiting to be solved. But,
Right.
I did what I
Amazon has moved on with their problems, but
That's it.
what an example of a leader in and of itself, like Scott Petoskey, understanding that it's not just about recruiting externally, but also looking at your team and motivating your team and seeing the best in them and trying to develop talent internally, right? Most people are playing checkers. He was playing chess.
He's playing chess, and that's just the way that he's always operated. It's interesting because at some point in recruiting, you realize either you love it or you hate it, and you can't wait to get out of it. So understand that as quickly as you can, and then lean into that. But yeah.
I'm excited. I'm excited about this coaching idea you got. I think there's a lot of legs on it. So listen, when that is fully baked and you're ready to talk about it, will you come back on Punk Rock HR?
Absolutely. And I'll share more on carmenhudson.com. I finally got my own name as my website.
Oh my God, your own domain name. You're a big girl now. Well, listen, Carmen, it was really amazing to have you on the program. We'll put all of that good stuff in the show notes. And once again, I just want to say thanks for coming on.
Well, thank you for offering to talk to me about this. I'm really getting into how I market this book. So I really appreciate you, Laurie, just for many, many years.
Proud to know you. I'm so proud to watch your good work. And, whether you're taking fiction writing classes or just, reading Jane Austen. Thanks again for being a guest.
Absolutely. Thank you, Laurie.
Thanks. Hey, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Punk Rock HR. Show notes and more can be found on punkrockhr.com. This episode was expertly produced by Emerald City Productions, and we would all appreciate it if you left us a 5-star review. So go to wherever you stream your podcasts like Apple or Spotify or iHeartRadio and leave that 5-star review and your thoughts on the episodes themselves. Now, that's all for today, and I really hope you enjoyed it. We will catch you next time on Punk Rock HR.